World War III, let's talk directly how it is being called now.
2034, a novel of the next world war.
The U.S. side stressing this was mostly a conversation about Ukraine, with Biden warning Xi of the consequences should China help Russia. But interesting to look at state media here, because right here in China, they're playing up that Xi pressed Biden on Taiwan, which China considers part of its sovereignty. Xi warning Biden that if the Taiwan issue is not handled properly, Aaron, he says it won't be good for U.S.-China relations. But state media here in China playing up that Xi pressed Biden on Taiwan, which China considers as part of its sovereignty. Xi warning Biden that if the Taiwan issue is not handled properly, it won't be good for U.S.-China relations.
And this, the Biden administration has been able to avoid the immigration issue during COVID, but the emergency rule that shut down the southern border may be expiring soon, just as an increasing number of Ukrainians will seek asylum in the United States, and DHS is estimating 170,000 other migrants would quickly try to emigrate. How's that going to play out?
It's time now for Big Saturday Flops, our picks for the biggest fails of the week. My pick is the New York Times finally confirming the Hunter Biden laptop story. This might be the biggest media fail of all time, but mainly because it's not just this one case. It follows a 5-year psychotic episode where the media completely went off the rails and reported every unconfirmed story they could think of, claiming Russian collusion between the Trump administration and Russia, which we now tragically see in full scale was the farthest thing from the truth. But it will definitely be one that lives in infamy.
A growing number of Ukrainian refugees have been arriving in Tijuana. This week, Reuters also reported that several Ukrainians say they passed through a checkpoint there and were granted permission to remain in the U.S. until 2023. CNN reports this is angering African and Central and South American refugees who are also seeking asylum. On Thursday, Axios reported that the Biden administration intelligence officials are privately warning about a potentially gigantic influx of migrants at the U.S. border, with the possibility of 170,000 expected to migrate, 25,000 of them already in shelters at the border. Asked what Americans would do if in the same position as Ukrainians, 55% said they would stay and fight. 38% said they would leave the country. More interesting, broken down by political affiliation, 52% of Democrats would flee, 36% of independents, 25% of Republicans. Which border will have a greater impact on the 2022 midterms, Ukraine and Russia or Mexico and the U.S.? Pretty interesting question, right? Here's the result. 55% of nearly, let's call it 17,000, say in the end it'll be the Mexican-U.S. border. If there is, I'll say I'm in that category of agreeing with the 55% if there's a mass migration event. As important and significant as the events that we're covering extensively in Ukraine are, all politics are local, and the prospect of that situation, not even including Ukrainian migrants, I think is a real burr in the saddle of the Biden administration. And a mass migration crisis on the southern border will stoke the GOP base. And they've already got, look, I give President Biden a lot of credit for maintaining this NATO alliance and keeping everybody on the same page. But I don't think it's enough to offset the strong hand that the GOP has been dealt for the upcoming midterm, which is a combination of inflation and gas prices and crime. And if you throw into that mix a border crisis, that handle trump anything else. No pun intended.
All right, coming up, misery for American drivers as gas prices remain high.
Yeah, I don't think Putin knocked that one down, did he? And Biden was vice president when Putin invaded Crimea in 2014. There was criticism at the time that the Obama administration didn't do enough with Biden as vice president.
Mach 5 missiles. American officials say Russia launched hypersonic weapons inside Ukraine. The development poses a new threat to Ukraine's ability to fend off Moscow's military.
Russia's military claiming they have used hypersonic missiles in combat for the first time to destroy an ammunition depot in western Ukraine. These weapons are capable of flying 5 times the speed of sound. However, NBC News was not able to verify these claims.
U.S. officials say Russia fired hypersonic missiles for the first time in combat. This, as Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin says.
But one thing that I think we can say for sure is this whole thing has turned out to be a whole lot more difficult for Vladimir Putin than he expected. And that's why he is reaching for things like either claims or in reality using things like a hypersonic bomb missile because he's getting desperate.
Second big reason for inflation is Vladimir Putin. Make no mistake, inflation is largely the fault of Putin. I'm going to do everything I can to minimize Putin's price hike here at home. It's going to go up. Can't do much right now. Russia's responsible.
But not everyone's buying that claim. Now a former top Obama advisor is going against it exactly.
Then now they've overcorrected, and so for a few days he was saying, you know, everything is Putin's price hikes, inflation is Putin's fault. People don't believe that either. They know that we had inflation before this. They know that gas prices were high before this. So they haven't dialed this in quite right yet. You can't blame everything in the economy on Putin.
As anybody knows, when you go to fill up your gas tank, there are two things that you notice. One is the price of gas. The second thing is all of those Biden stickers, the stickers of Biden saying, I did that. That's right. Those stickers are telling the truth.
Look, the big problem is, and Axelrod had it a bit, but he wouldn't admit the fact that these problems have dumb solutions. Everything that the Biden administration is doing is dumb. They're throwing money at things. They're making stuff up. It's like the 7-year-old running around completely denying that he ate all the cookies in the cookie jar. You know it's a lie. And they don't care. But until they admit that you've got Larry, Moe, and Biden running the country, that we will never get ahead and never solve any of these problems.
Hunter Biden is the most protected person in the country. He was given race and favor jobs.
These doors magically open.
He had a roaring sex addiction, videotaping every aspect of his life.
And walked in a customer clutching MacBook Pros.
It's not stuff that you would ever want to see the light of day.
Offering to pay Joe Biden himself.
Now, Houston, you got a problem here.
Judge Janine Pirro hosts Who is Hunter Biden? Streaming now, only on Fox Nation.
Also new tonight, U.S. officials say Russia launched hypersonic missiles against Ukraine, against a military ammunition warehouse in western Ukraine.
Yeah, well, Wolf, the U.S. officials saying that Russia did use these incredibly fast-moving missiles, hypersonic missiles, against Ukraine last week. Now, this is the first known instance of hypersonic missiles being used in combat ever. It's incredibly significant, and they travel at 5 times the speed of sound or faster. That, of course, makes defenses incredibly challenging. Now, when it comes to hypersonics, we should also note that the United States is top priority right now in the military space. One of them is developing their own hypersonic missiles, as Russia and as China have worked on their own capacity. Wolf?
All right, Kylie, thanks very much. Kylie Atwood at the State Department. He's on the ground in Kyiv. Sam, let's start with what could be one of the deadliest attacks on Ukrainian forces since the war began, and I hear the sirens now going off behind you.